Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of Nothing But the Truth with me, your host, Reverend Dr. Allen Dillon, presidential candidate for 2028. And I want to start out this evening by letting you guys know that, like last week, you're going to get to know me more. But this time, I'm going to explain to you guys what I'm going to be doing for you, the people, versus what we've faced in this country for 16 years now, and then by the time this is done, the past 20 years, is that there's so many things that have been stacked against us in this country. I mean, with ever since the bubble burst in '08, our economy and the American dollar has never fully recovered. And it's because, why? Oh, yeah. Every single president has given the Federal Reserve permission to just flood, just throw more cash out there. Well, here's the problem, is that those of us who could use it and put it to actual good use, which would pay for other people to work on your house or vehicle because that's what it needs is repair, or to be able to upgrade or something. But yet it's given to, hundreds, of millions of dollars were given to the same assholes on Wall Street and the same big banks that a lot of other smaller banks throughout our country rely on, and are kind of like an umbrella bank, or are have run their money through them. So that's my problem with the Federal Reserve, is that they have far too much power, because they're the ones that set and impose what the percentage rate is, what, for everything, for savings, for mortgages, for lending, for credit, all that, because prior to the '08 bubble bursting, nobody ever saw, 30+%, APR, or, for, that you had to pay back for a credit card. Nobody, even those with the worst. But that's the thing, is that they've taken this country, and again, because the Federal Reserve, they call themselves the Federal Reserve, they're the ones who are in charge of setting all these things and, getting rid of either, torn or defective bills and all this other stuff, and getting it out of, the everyday rotation of the economy and all of that, and also delivering new money and this and that. So my question is that why is it that they have so much power? Their names starts with federal. Now, granted, I do have to say that the security guards, because my father was one, when they they are sworn in as federal officers, because it's pretty much like the officers at the mint and the Treasury, they have both police officers and Secret Service. So, but my father was a federal officer. Now, that's the problem, is that they've got federal employees working there. They have, the name of the banks are Federal Reserve Bank, meaning that they are the reserve for the entire nation. And yet they've not been audited since that John Hancock was signed, giving them authorization to pretty much, at first they did, I'll have to admit, when the Federal Reserve was American owned businessmen, who had the money to, help the economy and everything else. And that's what got the dollar back on pace and everything else. And, got us, step by step out of the Great Depression and everything else. But then, as time went on, they just got more power hungry. They just took the attitude of, oh, well, we'll make the decisions. And they're the ones who will tell the Treasury and the Mint how much to print out, how much they need, how much needs to be flooded into the market, meaning flooded out into everybody else's pocket, businesses and stuff like that. But problem is that here's what's been wrong. I'm going to sever ties with the Federal Reserve unless they come under full federal compliance and become a full federal agency, because they get the color outside the lines anytime they want and when it appeases them and benefits them. But yet anybody else that they back or whatever, if they so much, barely color outside the lines, they're on them with fines, fees, everything else. Not only that, it's the fact that some of the Federal Reserve banks, I guess you can say, what they have as collateral, whether it be land, gold, oil, diamond, whatever it is, that if it's not American owned, then they should not have a say in the American economy, because they're the ones that can also completely screw up our economy. So they've not, part of the agreement was that the IRS could not audit them. Okay. Ever since this treaty was signed with, I believe it was temporarily with Roosevelt, and then permanently with Truman, because I think Roosevelt, he obviously saw that America needed a bailout. And so he went to, the Rockefellers and, all the big names back then. So that's why the Federal Reserve kind of started, is kind of the 1% of the 1% club, who were going to be there in case stuff like 2008 happened, or that Black Friday or Black Thursday, whatever it was in '96, I think it was, when the market, kind of tanked. But like I said, but they have too much control. They have too much say. There's no oversight for them. Okay? Zero. None. Nada. The IRS cannot set foot in there. That's going to change. Why? Because we have a reserve. It's called Fort Knox. And yes, even though some conspiracy theorists think that, all the gold's gone and this, that, and the fourth, it's not. But to base our money, which still the Federal Reserve and the Treasury have set at what the price of gold was back then, when it was officially signed, and everything. So if we were up to today's prices, America would be out of debt, and here's the thing, not even all of it, just, okay, if we took a quarter of what we have in reserve, which is what I plan to do, and this this presidential executive order on day one that I sign will be called Stop America from Going Broke. Because that's what the current dictator and antichrist are doing. Because they're literally making enemies. But as I've told you guys, my campaign slogan is "Together we thrive." So, yeah, I'm going to make sure that within my first 100 days, I'm going to do as much as possible to make sure that I'm not focusing on, trying to help the Antichrist, keep you guys come first. Department has access to the department, yet with that. But the very big one is to Department of Education, and in that will include making sure that in emergency presidential order, or I think it's presidential, where it could get, is to sure that education system, because right now, thanks to the and the Antichrist. It's the fact that it's been torn apart to where Linda McMahon, Trump told Linda McMahon, that he, the only good job that she could do was to make sure that she made enough cuts to work herself out of a job. Those were his words. And so he's dismantled and he's taken the Department of Education and he's split it among other chair members. One being urban development and community and everything. But here's the problem: there was zero increase to their budget, which they already had set for projects for redoing housing and helping people, and yeah, but nothing for the urban or the poor or the ghetto or, the trailer park kids, or, if you don't meet a certain standard or your district is not in a certain prosperous, and also depending on, and I have it on good advice from people inside the White House that when the money aspect as to how each state was to receive educational funds, that it was to be broken down starting by the highest amounts going to the predominantly white and affluent areas, the least amount going to poor communities and also those with special needs, those with disabilities. I mean, we are literally, our dictator is literally turning this country into what Russia's doing, because they actually will take those who have mental or physical disabilities, from Downs to bipolar schizophrenia to depending on whether they can use somebody who is on the autistic scale, but anybody who they deem as not fit to be seen or part of society. It's like a warehouse with beds, and trust me, it's poor conditions, but we're not doing any better for those with disability, those children who are a gift from God, no matter by what name you call him. And I can say that with earnest because ran into an Islamic woman, and everything. And she had her daughter who had some disabilities, and I let her daughter know. I said, just so you know, you are a gift from Allah. Because the thing is that by being a reverend, that doesn't mean that I have to jam Christianity down everybody's throat. There's no reason why we can't respect each other. So she appreciated that. But I've seen firsthand, because where I live in Carroll County, the least amount of money, even when schools were supposed to be evenly distributed funds, was the fact that the school, and Carroll County has a lot of residents, but the school is maybe, it's one floor, obviously, and I would say that if you took the layout of the first floor of like two, at most three regular sized single family homes and you put them together, that would equal the size. And here's the thing, is that there was no specialized teaching for any individual group of disability. It was like, hey, just play, just do this, do that. You know, they didn't try to teach them life skills. They didn't even like give them a chance. So I'm going to fight as hard for them as I am for those who, you know, deserve every chance, especially making sure that DEI does get reinstated. Because I can tell you right now that all the elite colleges you watch, that come, if if spring sign up, or after this graduating class, that come fall, that you will see so many people of race, creed, color, ethnicity, religion, identity, sexuality, preference, that whereas they would have been accepted even upon their merit as they're supposed to be, are going to be denied because the major colleges want to go back to the good old boys system. No more. Because it is time that Martin Luther King dream speech, which has zero reality, especially now, you know, into the millennium. It's to bear forces, everything together, and play together without there being this continuous. Even after 60 years, he stood next to Johnson and was signing of civil rights. Remember, when Obama had a chance to make it permanent, and don't forget that when Johnson originally wrote it, he put that little fine print in to where it said that it had to be re-voted on every 10 years to see, whether equality should remain in this country or not. Why? Just baffles me. But the thing is that upon getting his palm greased, Obama, instead of making it permanent, guess what he did? He only doubled it to 20. Well, here's the best part, is that during my presidency, when I'm elected in 2028, not only am I going to make it permanent, I'm going to, you know, I'm going to go to, as not just a citizen of the United States, but as, Dillon versus the United States, to make it permanent through the Supreme Court, because there should be no reason why civil rights should be taken away. Now, there's some of the commonwealth states out there who, yeah, they're part of America, but problem is they think that their constitution, their state constitution, overrides the actual constitution, your God-given constitutional common law rights. Example is Pennsylvania, to where, my brother, Teddy, they accuse him of something he didn't do, and they're trying to tell him he's got to pay them $50 to enter a plea of guilty or not guilty. That's illegal. Same as charging, but like I said, so when it comes to the Commonwealth states, I'm sorry, and I'm not trying to be an asshole, but if you're a part of the United States, then you follow the U.S. Constitution. And so for those, and of course it's Pennsylvania, it's West Virginia, Virginia, and one of the other southern states. But, if I'm not, I don't know, somebody told me, I believe that, up in New England, there's a state that's a commonwealth. But here's my point, is that it's going to be either you will validate the the citizens of America from your state under the protection of the Constitution and their constitutional common law rights. You will concede and be an actual state of, and follow federal guidelines first, versus putting your agenda here and people's actual legal rights here. And they will have the decision to either to concede and, join and stop being a commonwealth and actually follow the constitutional law, or they will be given the choice to literally become, their own, kind of like Africa, how it's broken down, into their own little, smaller states and everything. Because it's like the Musketeers. It's all for one and one for all. Because I'm sick and tired of seeing this nation fight and everything else over, the littlest thing. I'm sick and tired of seeing people fight and bicker and argue and everything, to where they sit there And they just, their whole argument is, oh, well, it's because it's our state law. Okay. Another prime example is in Virginia, is that now, this is speaking from personal experience. So, this was 12, a little over 12 years ago. Uh, my son was only a couple months old, and uh, my ex, and yes, I have sole custody of my son. I'm a proud single father, but I chose my son and everything else, because she would not stop the drugs. So she's the one that chose drugs over hugs. So, but anyway, we were coming back, and we were not far from the Maryland line, and I got pulled over by a Virginia cop. His exact words to me were, you know, he said, do you know why I pulled you over? I said, well, no, sir, I actually don't. And he said, well, because, you look like the car that I saw that was speeding, I was trying to catch up to. You're, I was trying to, I was not, because normally when they run radar, it'll ping right and it'll come up and all that. It was, you look like. Now, I told, and at that time, my son Gabriel, still an infant, just a couple months old, 3 months old. I don't, my, officer, I said, I have both my children. It's really rain, and then I have to go. I would be saying, we'll look like car, so I'm going to be sick because I have plates. He's like, well, anybody from Virginia ends up getting sick at some point, so you may as well get one out. Go down to the hearing. Judge tells me, I have to come down from because up. There, you think that just because you show up and everything else that the points to be dropped and fine to be reduced or probation for judgment or da 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 da, and he starts going on and on. And I explained to him, I said, Your Honor, if I said, I talked to the DA's office and told them that they were to produce, because at that time is when, back in, 2012, they still had, the dash cams, and, and they were always mic'd up to it, so that way it could be heard going on. And at that time, the body cameras, they were just kind of started, but he didn't have it. But he was definitely mic'd up to his dash cam, and I requested for that to be put. The judge denied me. And I said, Your Honor, I said, it's my constitutional right. Otherwise, it's a prey violation. You can sit there and, quote to me any, constitutional, federal constitutional right you want. But, but you Yankees need to learn. And so that should show you right there as to why I'm talking about what I am, is that this stuff still goes on today, no matter where you are. So, like I said, it's either we're a whole country united, the commonwealths are done away with. And, the main reason why with the commonwealths I want them done away with is because there are so many innocent people locked up in these states because of being falsely accused by things and charged by a magistrate who only has to go for a weekend course, pass the test, and then he can be, he could be a janitor at a high school, but, then when he's paid or whatever, then he's the commissioner. He could, you know, I don't know, but it's just, and I've seen it happen too many times to where these commonwealth states, they take advantage of people. They do everything they can to milk them, just because some don't have taxes on some things. Okay, like Pennsylvania, they don't have, um, they don't tax you on vehicles. They don't tax you on, like, the house doesn't come with tax, but you know, when you're paying for it, but you still got to pay the property tax, clothing, food, stuff like that. Okay, that's great. But guess what? That will be a nationwide thing, okay, to where there will be necessities nationwide, ding, ding, are going to be done away with tax that way. Because there's zero reason why everybody should have to pay tax for things that it states in the Constitution under common law rights that you are to be allowed to barter, trade, or buy without tax. Now, this is still after the IRS had been established. It still applied, but the Federal Reserve changed that. But anyway, but like I said, so that's another thing. And plus, I can guarantee, yes, this country is known for growing a lot of corn and everything else, but it's because in order for farmers to get the grant from the government in order to help them make ends meet, because they're told that they have to grow corn, but then, the price is down here for it. So without the grant, they lose everything. And I can guarantee you that there were a lot of farms that were during this during our dictator's first term that were actually bought from underneath of them, to where, you know, even though they had the deed to the house, is that because they, like, I'll give you examples. Okay. There's a grocery chain around here called Wise, that runs all up through PA, where, Maryland, West Virginia, Virginia, like, there are a lot of places, and they're personally owned farms to their, it's not true, uh, because of the law, to where if you do a general and buy, which means that if you reject, or if you paid the bank, I believe it's 1.5 times, whatever the property value is, plus extra half, that you can legally buy land out of people in certain spots, especially farms. And these are farms that have been in family for centuries, so, but, and it's just getting more and more, because now the farmers, thanks to the Antichrist, decided to literally, I think he either got F or even lower the grant that farmers that are supposed to feed us and produce corn for corn syrup, for, all, other, for obviously tortillas and bread and, other things, but it now is direct, and is by this giant, whatever, Wegmans, whatever. They'll buy these farms underneath people for pretty much $1, and if there's any kind of lien, loan, mortgage, um, whatever, then they'll be able to get it for even cheaper. How would you feel if in the middle of the night you come home and somebody you have no clue who they are have the police kick your door in, and they don't even have to give you 30 days. It's up to the person who will buy the land out from underneath of you. And there's people in Baltimore City who have bought entire blocks. Okay. But somebody could, buy, you know, every house on, buy a street, or buy an apartment building, or buy, the land, or whatever, wherever you live. Somebody can literally buy it out from underneath of you, have the police kick your door in, and they don't have to give you 30 days. They will tell you to grab whatever you can. They, obviously, when, depending if it's a prominent person in your town, area, state, whatever, the cops kind of, kowtow to them. But if it's somebody that they know is just somebody there looking for an investment, they'll give you like maybe 30 minutes to get stuff together to take, and then you're not allowed back on your property, in the house, even with a police escort, nothing. Which means that the person who bought everything, they literally can take, if you don't grab in that first 30 minutes everything of value that you have, but then they have, but then that person has, I believe it's 48 to 72 hours to place all your belongings outside, all of them. But here's the thing, that if they find something of any kind of value or whatever, they're not going to do it. So, and then it's a court battle. But anyway, these are the things that need to stop, because it's becoming the new trend. Because when the bubble burst in '08, guess who decided to start buying up land? Both the government and banks and, all kinds of different people started buying up tracts and hectares. When I say hectares, I'm talking, hold on, we even do it this way. Um, how many acres in a hectare?
1 hectare is equivalent to 2.471 acres.
Okay, so 1 hectare is almost 2.5 acres. So when I'm saying that they're buying 10,000 plus hectares of land at pennies on the dollar, because the houses are foreclosed on, this, that, the fourth, and all this other thing. Guess what? Those same assholes that lost all the money, that guaranteed people's retirements, got money from the government as a bailout, and instead of making sure that you guys got what's supposed to be yours, they decided to throw themselves. They took all their employees on vacation, gave raises, bonuses, all kinds of stuff. Well, here's the thing, is that racketeering and there's some other federal laws that fall into play, to where I will make sure that they are used to the full extent of the law, because they have no statute of limitations, to make sure you guys get your retirement back, to make sure that you guys get, what is yours and everything else. Now, I know that saying that may bring a lot of pain to some of you, because there were some of you who lost people because of that. But what I'm trying to tell you is that in 2008, when I'm elected, come January 20th, 2029, I will make sure that it is you guys that get the government back, gain control. I will make sure that any and all of the little vermin out there who will sit there and there could be 1,000 of you in, waiting in line, in office or whatever, and everything else, to speak to your representative from Congress, whether it be from House or Senate. And the problem is that one of these little vermin walks up with a $10,000 check, and guess what? They've bought the vote that you're there to tell your representative, hey, look, we don't like this. This could really, hurt our state, water, wildlife, this, that, and the third. Guess what? Yeah, their vote was bought. You have no say. Look at the fact that, again, and I have to point this out, which I will make sure that anything that this dictator and anti do up and to the national, up there to where there are animals who are on the extreme danger, but they're going in there, and they, that company, any of us will make sure that don't just plant sap, they will buy at least, it's not as long as, full strength. So mine is because it should go to high. It should not be worried out, well, should I clear stuff before in summer, everything, either for quadruples, right? All the hair, the data and anti, make sure that the nation of the world get. Now has to barter with and come to a compromise with America in order, because they need our goods that we send just the same as we need theirs. The only difference is they need ours more. So that's what I'm saying, is that why is it that when every single president from the past 20 years has promised and swore that, well, I mean, I really could go back to Reagan, but I won't. I'll keep it this millennium. So it's the fact that for the past 25 years, we have not seen a single president keep their promise that they spewed out on the campaign, you know, during their campaign and everything else, you know, not within the first 100 days, not, you know, not with even the first 365 days, not, you know, not even any time whatsoever. But I guarantee, and I will make sure that that you guys will receive in the mail that if I do not keep my promises when I'm elected, which, remember, a petition in every state only takes anywhere from 5 to 10 to 100,000 signatures, you know, for something big to take place. I'm going to mail it to every address. And if I'm not keeping my promises, if I'm not fulfilling what I swear to you guys, and that I truly am going to represent you, that I will not take donations from big oil, big pharma, or anything else, because I refuse to be in their pockets. But with your guys' donations, with your guys' help, and with you guys standing behind me, of course, the only IOUs that I have are to you, which I wouldn't even consider them IOUs. It's the fact that you guys have deserved and have been in wanting somebody who is going to represent you, speak for you, care about you, actually pay attention to what's going on in our own country, and to try to ward off and stop and make sure that specific things do not transpire, and to where situations that are bad in America, that there's ways to make them better. And that's what I'm going to do, because you guys are the heartbeat of America. Okay? Because here's the thing. Without you guys, we would not even have a flag to represent our country. If we didn't have you guys, it would literally be a lawless nation and free for all. Without you guys, we would be a very poor country, even though we have a lot of resources. Without you guys who put everything